welcome to MagicGatheringStrat. I'm Dan, I will be your host today, and this is Pauper Walkthroughs, episode 6. We're going to talk about blue-black Trinket Control. A classic Pauper deck. We're going to talk with Power T, the creator of the deck, and we will bring him online shortly. The deck is a mid-range control deck without counterspells, and we will go through every individual card choices, talk a bit about the deck's history, and this is a two-parter. So in the second part we will talk about the 1099 matches I and Power T have played it with this deck in tournaments and in the tournament practice room, and we have plenty of statistics which will show you why this deck is a pretty powerful choice for a deck to play in Classic Pauper. I'm from Sweden, so please excuse my accent. I talk English like a drunk Viking, and I hope you can live with that. His English is a bit better because he has been living in the US for a couple of years. So let's bring him on. And without further ado, Power T, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
I'm great.
Before we start talking about the deck, I thought we would talk a little about you. I've been very secretive about you. Is there anything you would like to tell the listeners?
Oh, I love talking about myself, you know.
Yeah, you do.
Well, I have been described as a pro from before the dawn of time. That was what David Price said once about me. Well, I started playing back in 1994, and I immediately started playing a lot. I played about 35 hours a week for 5, 6, 7 years. And I was on and off on the Pro Tour for about 7 years. But then I stopped. Eventually I wasn't able to keep up the 35 hours a week, so I dropped down a little bit. And now I play some weeks I actually play 35 hours a week, but some weeks I don't play at all. So. And I no longer play on the Pro Tour. I play other formats, more casual formats like Pauper, for example.
I heard that you built the deck for and trained the first Swedish national champion. Is that the case?
Oh yeah, that is the case.
Oh, great.
Are you talking about yourself now?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
also, when ranking was introduced in Magic back in 1996, yes. You were actually the #1 ranked constructed player in the world.
Yes, I was #1 in Type 2, and I think I was #3 in Type 1, and I had below 1600 in Limited.
That's interesting.
Yes, I was a constructed specialist back then. So, but that was still enough to qualify me for Worlds. And I won the Swedish National Championships in Type 1 twice, actually, 96, 97.
Right.
And the rating was good enough to actually get me invited for the first Duelist Invitation that was called back then, with the top 16 players of the world.
Yeah.
So I was actually good back then.
And you are also the guy that built the Leon Lindbäck's Necro deck for the first Pro Tour, right?
Well...
Oh, maybe Leon did something too. And that's where we lost him. Let's reconnect him.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Welcome back.
Oh.
Where were we? The Necro deck.
Yes.
Okay, that's the Black Summer of '96 story. Maybe we shouldn't go too deep into that.
No.
All right, and you started looking at Pauper in April 2012?
Yes, well, I had played a little bit of Pauper before that, but not very much. But then a good friend of mine started talking about Pauper a lot, namely you.
Yeah, I remember.
Yes, so you said, oh, you should look at Pauper, so I went back into it, and I played a little bit. I played some other decks than the one we're going to talk about right now, and I found out that the format was an interesting format, lots of different decks. I like that.
Why did you almost immediately go for blue-black?
Well, blue and black are two of my favorite colors, at least in top 5. But well, I found card economy is nice, and I think that the crypt rats is really the thing that puts it over the top, because there's so few sweepers in Pauper, and as a control player, I'm a control player at heart. I need sweepers, things to kill lots of creatures, so I can get back into the game when the beatdown deck starts pumping out creatures. And there are other sweepers in this format as well, but Crypt Rats is on a level of its own.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. At some point, I brought DC Casanuda's blue-black Trinket Control deck to your attention after I have been beaten by it at least twice in tournaments.
Yeah, it was loved for first sight. It's a very good deck. Even better now, though, of course, since we've done a few changes. But it's a very good deck. It's flexible. It has card economy and quick removal, and it's very good.
Let's talk about the cards in the deck, and we can start with the land base.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a land base that might look random, because there's one of several different cards, and you might think that, well, why do you only have one? I know some players, they like to have 4 of everything, 4 or 0, so they know what to expect. And I think that starting out, when you start building a deck and you have 4 of each, that's fine. But then when you play test and you figure out, okay, I only want 3 of this and 1 of this and so on, and then you should make those changes and don't be afraid of losing the aesthetics of the deck or something. If you look at this mana base, we have 21 lands, and at the moment we have, for example, 3 Thermorphic Expanses and 1 Dimir Guildgate.
Actually, I just cut the Guildgate out of the deck before this. I didn't mention that to you, but I think that's where testing is pointing, that the Guildgate should leave the deck.
That's a change that might happen in my deck as well. But the reason here is that Thermorphic Expanse is usually better than the Guildgate, but sometimes the Guildgate is better. So that's why I'm still trying out 1 Guildgate, but I might go back as well to 4 Thermorphic Expanses then. But then the Thermorphic Expanses is the explanation for 1 single island, because you can search for it for so many different ways.
And of course, having lands that don't generate black mana is really bad, because they won't help Crypt Rats.
Yes, exactly, and other things also. Many times when you play the deck, the first 5-6 turns, you feel like a mono black deck, because you only have black cards and swamps and stuff. But then eventually you run out of cards, and then you start top decking Muldrifters, and great, I needed refills, and now you get refills.
When we got the deck from DC Casanuda, it had 19 or 18 lands, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't play that low land count. I needed more lands, so I think I always played 20. And then you said 20 is not enough, and I said 20 is enough, and you said no, it isn't. And then eventually you said, how about we adding a Baron more then as a 21st land? And I said, you're a genius. Let's do that, because.
And that's the reason for the lone Baron more that might look quite weird.
Yeah, but it works too, because I mean, many times you have it early and you play it, and then you bounce it with the DimirTrinket later when you need a card draw. It works too. I mean, it would be nice to have even more, but you have so many lands now that comes into play tapped. I count the Thermorphic Expanses also as lands that comes into play tapped, so you have to really be careful about that. So
that's one of the big criticisms I have received for this deck, that there are too many lands that come into play tapped, but it works out.
Yeah. It works out, and if we don't have those lands that comes into play tapped, it's going to be really hard to splash that blue color that we need for that card economy and flexibility.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's that you have to take the good with the bad.
I did try to run another Baron more. You were very skeptical about it, and I eventually went back to 21 land.
Mm-hmm. Well, it wouldn't be that big of a difference to do that. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, it's not a big difference. So, but.
Can you talk briefly about Dimir Aqueduct?
Yeah, it's a very powerful card especially when you're mulliganing, because you do get 2 mana for 1 card. It's Yeah, I think it's the one card that makes this deck very good at mulliganing, because if you mulligan into that, it's like 2 land drops, and basically this deck has 25 land drops because you have 21 lands, but 4 of them makes you play lands twice. Uh, and I've never mulliganed to 3 before I play this deck. I only mulliganed to 3 once though with this deck, but I did win.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. The other guy should be ashamed of himself. But so that's very good. It's of course you invest 2 land drops in 1 card. So if people like land destructed or something, that sucks. But still, it's only 1 for 1 card at least. So it's not card disadvantage, but still sucks.
Also, one thing that the DimirTrinket does is it allows you to Bazooka Bog 5 times.
Yeah.
Which is often useful.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I forgot about that. That's a very good point.
And you will also be able to get your Baronmore back if you have to play it early and then cycle it.
Yes, so they are even better than you think of at first, as you can hear.
It really grew on me the way DimirTrinket plays. It's really very powerful.
Yes, absolutely. It's a very powerful card.
I like to mention here that we have played now, as we will discuss in part 2 of this, that we have played 1099 matches with this deck, and we've been doing that since April, May 2012. So we have a lot of experience with this deck. I never heard of anyone writing an article or something about a deck they played this much.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to the creatures.
Okay, the Fume Spitters. It's a very, very solid creature. The -1/-1 works on so many creatures in Pauper because there's a lot of beatdown decks and there's a lot of creatures that only has 1 toughness. So you can kill them right away, that's good. And sometimes you can block with a Fume Spitter, you can block 1 creature and then put the -1 on another creature. That works too. And yeah, so it's a solid creature and it's very cheap. And you have lots of shenanigans you can do with the stuff like Silvio Flagstaff and Grim Harvest and other stuff like that in the deck. Then the Augur of Skulls. Originally the deck only had 2, but I went up to 4 because, well, I wanted some kind of way to beat the Grixis Storm and the Red-Blue Storm pre-sideboard. You know, they storm you out with Empty the Warrens and the Grapeshot. And I also went up to 4 Augur of Skulls because of another reason I'll mention in a minute. We also have 3 Crypt Rats. The Great Sweeper. It's a great card. And it's a card that you have to think a little bit about when you play it, because sometimes you Crypt Rat for a big bunch, like 4 or 5 or something, to kill all the creatures. Sometimes you might do it differently. For example, if someone has out a Doomed Traveler, the white 1/1 that gives you a 1/1 token when he dies, you might Crypt Rat for once, and then for 1 point, if they have a bunch of those out, my opponent had the other day, you play the Crypt Rat, you Crypt Rat for once, and then in response to that, you Crypt Rat for 1 again, using the control button. So his Doomed Travelers die, and then they come back, and when they come back, they walk right into another point of Crypt Rat's damage, killing them once more.
There are so many levels to Crypt Rats. There are a lot of things that you can do right with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you have out Augur of Skulls, you can regenerate Augur of Skulls to Crypt Rats if you do it like for 1 big bunch. But if you do lots of small bunches, you won't be able to do it, because then you have to regenerate once for each Crypt Rat effect. So you have to figure out, okay, how many does he have similar regenerators out? Then you have to do many small times and so on. And you have trick with Silvio Lifestaff, and you can get, and it's not just a sweeper Crypt Rat, it's also a finisher. And sometimes it's a drawer. You can make draws with it. So it's a great card.
In tournaments, I've often used Crypt Rats to draw and then win on the clock.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's a good
but that's a reality of tournament play.
Yeah, absolutely. And the clock is there. It's like Deluxeicoff said in another interview. It's use it. if you can use it that way, let's use it.
Yeah, because you have to use it, or else it will be used against you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have the Chittering Rats. Originally there was 4 of them. I'm just playing 2 right now. It's a little bit of a mana curve issue. Also, it's a matter of fitting all the cards in the deck. Chittering Rats is a solid card. It's usually not spectacular, but it's usually solid cards. You can usually get 2 for 1 with it because they have to put the card back, and then you can trade with a blocker, or sometimes trade with a removal spell or something. Against some decks you can't do that, so then you take it out. Like combo decks, for example, they don't care about the 2/2, and Delver, the mono blue Delver of Secrets deck, they don't care about blockers on the ground usually, so then it's not that solid. Then we get to the Trinket Mage.
Let's save the Trinket Mage and
Okay.
go to the Muldrifter first.
Okay, the Muldrifters. I think originally there were 3 Muldrifters, upped it to 4 when I upped the Undying Evils from 2 to 3. The Muldrifters, maybe the best creature in Pauper, probably the best blue creatures in Pauper anyway. It's a great creature. It's the shenanigans with Undying Evil is awesome, and you can also get it back with Grim Harvest, and just randomly playing a 2/2 for 5 flyer that gets you 2 cards. It's a great card.
Yeah, and he does a lot of work against Delver.
Yeah.
Like every creature they have except Spire Golem and Frostburn Weird just have problems.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then we have Trinket Mage and his package of trinkets.
Oh yes.
So first the Mage.
Yeah, the Trinket Mage, solid creature, 2/2. He doesn't exactly smash face, but eventually his damage that he does will add up. So and sometimes he just blocks some random creatures, so that's okay. But then you have his trinkets. You have 2 Executioner's Capsules, which 3 mana. First 1 mana to play it, and 2 more mana to kill something. There are other cheaper options, but this is an option that gives you card advantage because you get to keep the Trinket Mage also. So that's solid. The Silhouette Lifestaff, so many times you've been saved by it because you can play it, especially on Fume Spitter is probably my favorite one to play it on, because you can block and you can sacrifice it to gain 3 life, and then you have the Grim Harvest to bring it back. But pretty much, on any creature it's good.
The biggest advantage with Fume Spitter is that you can get 3 lives at will.
Yes.
And you can even Fume Spitter himself if you need to.
I've had him kill himself so many times. Always getting tired of it. The Trinket Mage also has 3 Vault of the Whispers among the lands to fetch for. So it's great flexibility that you can get either a cheap artifact or a land. That's another way that we can get away with just 21 lands.
And that's one of the reasons why the deck also mulligans so well, that you often recover by Trinket Maging for the 4th land.
Yes. Originally I think there was 1 or 2 Vault of the Whispers, but you want 3 of them, because sometimes you have 2 already in hand when you get the Trinket Mage and you want the 3rd one. So.
Yeah, no, originally there were also 5 trinkets instead of 6.
Yeah.
Which made quite a difference.
Because the Trinket Mage runs out of trinkets, yes.
Yeah, and that happens still sometimes, but having 6 trinkets is a lot more than 5.
Yeah, it's a big difference, absolutely. I can feel the difference. Absolutely.
And then we have Undying Evil.
Oh yes, Undying Evil. It's a great card that combos so well with all the cards. Well, with a lot of cards here. Perhaps my favorite is the Muldrifter, where you evoke the Muldrifter, and you put the 2 effects on the stack. This is important. So listen, there's 2 effects that the Muldrifter has. One is that he dies, and that he draws 2 cards. And you need to figure out which of these 2 effects to put on the stack first, which is the dying part, and then you put the draw 2 cards part, and then you draw the 2 cards, and then is the right time to play your Undying Evil on the Muldrifter. Because you might have drawn another Undying Evil, for example, and sometimes they try to kill your Muldrifter in response to you playing Undying Evil. And then, let's say that you already drew and you draw another Undying Evil, then you have double Undying, so you can protect in that way. But sometimes I just play Muldrifter on turn 4 with the black mana up, hoping to draw into Undying Evil, and then you absolutely have to stack it in the right order. It's not that hard to stack it in the right order. There's just 2 different orders you can stack it, but you have to keep that in mind. But once you get it, you get 4 cards, and you get a 3/3 flyer for those 2 cards, and that's absolutely great.
A 3/3 flyer is huge in Pauper.
Yeah, absolutely. But Undying Evil also combos with other cards. With Augur of Skulls is my second favorite, and sometimes I'll skip the Muldrifter combo just to go for the Augur of Skulls combo, because it's so devastating. You play the Augur of Skulls, and the next upkeep, you play Undying Evil on the Augur of Skulls, and you make them discard 2 cards. Then the Augur of Skulls comes back, and you make them discard 2 more cards. That's 4 cards. You pay 2 cards, they pay 4 cards. That's almost like double him to Torak. You do get to choose what cards, though, so it's not quite as devastating, but still very, very good. And sometimes people just concede when you do that.
It's often really devastating, yeah.
Yeah. And then you can just randomly play it on Fume Spitter to get him bigger and get to use his effect once more, or you can just they attack and you jump a block with a Trinket Mage or Shivering Rats, and you play Undying Evil, so you get a bigger guy and you get to use the effect once more. That's good. And on Crypt Rats, sometimes when you play a creature with lots and lots of 1/1s, you can play it on Crypt Rats and activate Crypt Rats so it dies and comes back as a 2/2. And then you have a 2/2 that can crypt for 1 point every turn, and not die. So it's Pestilence on wheels, and it's actually can survive its 1 point Crypt Rats.
That was one of the critical plays, the Undying Evil on Crypt Rats and the Undying Evil on Fume Spitter, that made Infect such a fantastic matchup.
Yeah.
Because killing 2 creatures for 2 mana is exactly what Infect didn't want.
Mm-hmm. It's as we will see later, it's so much easier to beat Infect than Stompy, because we're so good at dealing -1/-1, but -2 is different.
Yes. What about the rest of the removal package? We've already talked about the 2 capsules and the 4 Fume Spitters, but there is even more.
Yeah, the Tragic Slips is also a great card. We originally had 4. We had to drop it down to 3. It's a solid card, especially with the Fume Spitters, which makes it so easy for you to set it up by just randomly sacrificing a Fume Spitter or something, and then you use the Tragic Slip for -13, -13. Sometimes you have to use it just for a -1/-1 though, when they have a 1 toughness creature.
Like a first turn Delver or first turn Glistener Elf.
Yeah, absolutely. I play it on stuff like that also, as long as they die. But the morbid stuff, I love it. Sometimes they play an Ulamog and they're like, oh, this is too big, you can't. Oh, Tragic Slip. Oh, they died. Oh, and sometimes you play Tragic Slip of one of the creatures and they try to save it with the Giant Growth. And I'm like, well, that's not gonna make it.
No, yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, they think it's -1/-1, but no, it's -13. So good luck with that. Yeah, then you have a Diabolic Edict.
Oh, wait a minute. About Tragic Slip, then. It was actually the 4th Tragic Slip that was cut for the Baronmoor.
Yes.
So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Diabolic Edict.
Diabolic Edict. Originally, these were Geth's Verdicts instead. But playtesting showed that you don't always have double black as easy as you might think, because, especially about the 4 Dimir Aqueducts, sometimes you play a swamp on turn 1 or something, and then you play Dimir Aqueduct on turn 2, and then on turn 3 you play the swamp again, so you have a Dimir Aqueduct and a swamp in play, and you want to play like Geth's Verdict plus Tragic Slip, but you can't do that because you only have 2 black and 1 blue mana, or you might want to play Geth's Verdict plus Fume Spitter or something. But if you have the Edict, you can play Edict and then Tragic Slip. So it's a better card in this deck. It's absolutely a better card. And we tried a little bit with like 2 of each, but Diabolic Edict was just so much better. Of course, you don't get to do that 1 point, that 1 life point that people lose from the Geth's Verdict. But you don't worry about that, because this is a control deck. We don't win by quickly killing our opponent. We win by massive card advantage usually. Yeah. So that 1 point isn't enough to justify the 2 black mana. Rather than 1 black and 1 colorless.
And often the massive amount of card draw in the deck and the card advantage we have allows Diabolic Edict to be having any 1-for-1 trade is a good thing then, because we just draw so many more cards.
Absolutely. We like to trade 1-for-1 most of the time because of the extra card advantage. Yeah. And another way to get card advantage, of course, is Sign in Blood. It's a very solid card drawing spell. Just 2 black mana to draw 2 cards. Of course, you do lose 2 life, which is an issue against some decks, but against other decks, it's just great card.
I have been experimenting with a deep analysis or 2 here instead of the Sign in Bloods. But you've always been on the Sign in Blood team. Can you explain the reasoning?
Well, Sign in Blood is obviously cheaper than deep analysis. And then the big thing for me is that our deck is mainly black with a splash of blue. And I don't want to put any more blue cards into it, because then I do lose games sometimes when I sit there with blue spells and no blue mana. It's not often, but it's sometimes. And Sign in Blood lets me draw into those blue lands, so I can play those blue spells.
True.
So that's why I don't add any more blue. Yeah.
It is actually surprising how close this deck is to a mono-black control deck. But the 7 blue cards make all the difference.
Yeah, as you can see, they're on the upper part of the mana curve. They're the more expensive cards. You don't have to play those cards early. So that's also important, because you don't always have blue mana early.
Exactly, and that's why we don't play spells like Agony Warp or Preordain or Ponder or something like that.
Exactly, it doesn't make sense. It's then you would have more like a blue splash black deck or something, and then the Crypt Trap doesn't work, and we can't have that, can we?
No. When you sent me this list, I started arguing about our final card here. And now I am just embarrassed about that argument, because I am so convinced. The long game of this deck is so extremely powerful, simply because of Grim Harvest.
Oh yeah, Grim Harvest is an awesome card in the late game. And early in the game, it's kind of weak, but in the late game you have lots of mana. You can just keep recurring whatever you want to recur. It's awesome. You can make them discard cards every turn with Gargoyle Skulls, or you can kill creatures every turn with Fume Splitter or Crypt Rats, so you can just draw more and more cards with Muldrifters. It's an awesome card, and you have to absolutely remember to keep 3 mana up at all times when you have Grim Harvest in the graveyard. I don't even tap out at the end of their turn or anything if they have cards in hand, because I want to be absolutely sure that I get my Grim Harvest back.
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah, as long as you have Grim Harvest, it's very hard to beat you. And so that's why it's great. And the way I like, the best way I think about playing Grim Harvest is just to dip it into your graveyard. When some creature die, maybe they try to kill your creature, or you use the Fume Splitter, then in response to that you use the Grim Harvest to put some guy back into your hand, and then the guy dies, and then you pay the 3 mana, you get the Grim Harvest back. So that's the best way to have it, always have it in your hand. But sometimes you can't do that, so then it's going to be around in your graveyard for a while. But as I said, then you have to absolutely keep 3 mana up at all times.
And it's devastating for other control decks when you can recur a Muldrifter every turn and draw 3 cards while they draw 1.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes you just play the Muldrifter with your evokes, you get the Grim Harvest back immediately. And then you can do it again, you do it a couple of turns, then you have so many cards in hand, it doesn't make any sense to do that, so then you just overwhelm the creatures because you're back in the game if you were never ever out of the game.
So if you had to remove 1 card from the deck, which card is the loosest?
I think Shitting Rat is the loosest. Although it is a solid card, but it's seldom spectacular. That might be it.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I've been playing 2 Undying Evils at some times, but I don't know if that was any good.
Well, it's not the worst card to cut if you want to cut something. There are times when you sit with Undying Evils and no creatures in your hand. It's one of the very few cards that can be dead at times. But I still think it's worth it.
Back when Storm was very rampant, I played a couple of the Duress's main deck. But I don't see a reason for doing that now.
No, I don't think so either. Unless the metagame changes dramatically.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about the sideboard. That is in flux since the bannings.
Yes, absolutely. Well, some of the cards are in flux, some of the cards have been there all along. But still, every card is open for discussion, although in some cases I'll shut down discussion pretty quickly. But well, we have 4 Duresses, and they've been there for a long time, and they're so solid against combo decks and control decks that I see them being in there for a long time. Although, well...
They are so critical that you really need 5,
yeah,
right?
that's why we have 1 Distress also. And against some decks, actually, Distress is better, because you really want to get their Muldrifters or something. So, if we're gonna take out the Duresses, I would put in more Distresses instead of the Duress.
Yeah. But the double mana cost is the thing that wins for the rest.
Yes, absolutely. It's a big difference, obviously. And yeah, that's about that.
Then there's an extra life staff.
Yes, against burn and beatdown decks, really aggressive decks, you need life and you need more life. That's why I have the Silver Life Staff, so you can gain 6 life every time you sack Fume Spitter or Ogre Skulls or something. And that's even better, of course. And against some decks they have artifact removal. Then it's also nice to have an extra life staff.
Yes, and the other trinket in the sideboard is the spell bomb.
Yes, we talked about having the spell bomb main, but we think that the graveyard decks aren't that powerful, and we can beat them at least most of the time. But having the spell bomb as an extra target in the sideboard, and then you bring it in against those graveyard decks, or most decks that overuse their graveyards, so then it's good to have that.
All of the Temporal Fissure decks and the Cloudpost control decks.
Tortured Existence decks.
Yeah, of course. Mono Black control.
There's lots of rogue decks that dumps lots and lots of cards in the graveyard with different effects, so it's good against them as well.
And there are just 2 cards against graveyards in the deck, but the ability to use Buka Bog several times and the ability to fetch the spell bomb makes it really more like 9 cards against graveyards.
Yes.
So Tortured Existence is a very, very easy matchup.
Absolutely, because of that. But we even win the first game often, so...
Yeah. And then there are 2 more Chittering Rats here.
Yes, I do bring them in against some decks. And against some decks I sideboard out Chittering Rats, against some I board in. There's a wide variety of different decks out there, of course, so it's solid. I realize it looks kind of strange to have 2 in the main deck and 2 in the sideboard, but that's just the way it works out with our sideboard plan and so on.
Often it's really very different decks as well. There's some aggro decks where you want 4 Chittering Rats, and some aggro decks where you want 0.
Yeah, exactly. It depends on what kind of creatures they have. Delver decks, for example, they have so many flyers that you want to be able to put the card back on top and trump or even trade with the creature. And you can do that against goblins, for example, because they have just small creatures. Against Delver, they fly over with most of the creatures, so it doesn't matter. And against Affinity, for example, they have so many fat creatures that it's hard to trade.
Yeah.
So that's why they come out sometimes. And then against combo decks, well, it depends on what combo deck it is, but it's not that. I mean, the two power is not enough of a clock to kill combo decks quickly. It depends on what combo deck it is. Some combo decks have lots of creatures that you want to kill, so then you have to keep the creature kill in when they do their fairy trickeries and so on.
Yeah.
Well, they don't play fairy trickeries, but they do tricks with the fairies.
I know what you're talking about. Then we have 1 copy of Deep Analysis, and that's the card I'm most happy to bring in against other control decks.
Yes, it's a solid card against control decks. I would probably put in another one if we had more blue mana, but as it is, we are kind of short on blue mana, so that's why I think that it has to be enough with that. And we do have duress and distress and stuff against control decks as well, so that's why it's only 1.
Yeah. And that leaves us 3 cards in the sideboard, and those used to be Echoing Decay in the days of Storm. And we've been talking a lot about... No, it's actually 5 cards left.
Yes.
Sorry.
No problem.
Okay, let's talk about those 5 cards. Here's Crypt Rat number 4. He's new in the sideboard.
Yeah, he's new in the sideboard. He used to be a Kumbaya Witches, but then he grew up and became a Crypt Rat or something. Well, you said that isn't Cryptrat number 4 a good option now when we start seeing these green-white hexproof decks and also one. I mean, people play
Elves.
elves, and the fourth one isn't that a good one? I mean, you never want to draw more than well. Sometimes you want to draw more than one, but usually having two in your opening hand is so clunky. But on the other hand, against some decks, you really need to have one to clear the board. So that makes sense. Then once you have it, you can often recur it with Grim Harvest and so on. But I guess the thing that put it over the top was the fact that green-white aura decks now are plentiful, and the Cryptat is much better than the Combi Witches, of course, against that.
Yeah, Combi Witches, there are 3 Echoing Decays and 2 Combi Witches missing here. And the Witches, they were very good against the Effect, and Effect is almost gone. And they were also very good against Delver, but now Delver is, for the time being at least, running Frostburn Weirds and Cloudfin Raptors. So they have gained some immunity against Witches.
But not Cryptrat.
But not Cryptrats, because no one is immune to the rat.
No one expects the Cryptrat. Yeah, and also we kind of beat the Delver anyway. We don't really need the Combi Witches against it. So.
Delver hates Cryptrats as well. Then there are 2 more verdicts. 2 verdicts. And there we lost him.
Hello?
Oh, hello.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We also have a 2 guest verdict instead of the case in the sideboard, and it's obviously good against green-white auras and against a lot of other decks where they have big creatures that you want to kill. And that's what I'm going to say about that. I know that you want to have 4 or even 5 edict effects in the sideboard.
Yeah, I will make an argument for that again if Hexproof becomes a tier 1 deck, but right now I'm happy as is.
Yes. And then the last card, a card that you haven't played that much with, because I made a change pretty recently, and you don't seem that convinced that they're good, but
I just haven't tested it enough.
Yeah, I have 2 Spinning Darknesses in the sideboard, and from what I can tell, they're great against against aggro decks. Perhaps Burn is the best card to bring it in against, but a lot of beatdown decks also get the taste of this Spinning Darkness thing. So it's a solid card. Of course, there's sometimes when you can't cast it, but what card isn't there that you can always cast, of course?
Yeah, I'm starting to come around. I think it will be very interesting to test this, because some more life gain is often very critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Do try to pay attention to what's in your graveyard. Usually you can't really care about it, but sometimes you might be able to stack something differently or something. But you can't count as much. Just pay attention that, okay, I don't have Fume Spitter anymore, so I might not play Grim Harvest then, because it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a non-bow going on with Grim Harvest here.
Yeah, it is. But I've play tested it, and it wasn't that big of a deal. Oftentimes I've exiled just Signing Bloods and Diabolic Edicts and Executioner's Capsules and Tragic Slips and so on. And usually, I mean, if you have 7 or 9 creatures in your graveyard, it usually doesn't matter that much because you still have enough targets for Grim Harvest to go around.
Yeah.
So it's usually not that big of an issue. But I'm just warning you that it could be an issue, so just try to pay attention. But that's a good rule always, to pay attention.
Yeah, this is a deck that rewards attention. Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes. It's not the easiest deck to play. There's lots of different choices, but that's what I love about it, that you can play it so many different ways. And it's also an awesome deck to make comebacks with. So many times I've been at 1 life, and I get out the life staff, and I get it to Fume Spitter, and I kill that creature that's been terrifying me, and I'm at 4 life, and I play it on some other guy, and I gain some more life, and then I win. And even just going down to 1 life against the burn deck, it's you can come back from that if you have the right tools.
One thing I like a lot about the deck is the fact that we don't have counterspells. We are tapping out all the time.
Unless you have Grim Harvest, yes.
Yeah.
Except all the time. Yes. It's nice. You don't have to agonize about that, at least. And a moment ago I said that it's great to have options, but some options are too agonizing. But it wouldn't work with counter spells because we don't have enough blue mana. I mean, you could try it and sometimes it would work, but most of the time it wouldn't work.
I think this is actually what makes this deck work against the really fast aggro decks that can overrun Izzet Cloudpost, for example, and overrun MBC, but they can't overrun this deck. Because we are fast enough.
Absolutely. You can have the mana, the way you use mana with counters, but sometimes you have to sit there and keep 2 blue up, and then they don't do anything. So then on your turn you realize, okay, those 2 manas there, they didn't do anything this turn, and I like to use my mana better than that. Of course, I mean I love counterspell, of course, also, but it's just not for this deck.
I don't like to play counterspells. I love the fact that they are not here.
Well, actually, I prefer mana drains, but...
Oh, of course. Is there anything else you would like to mention about the deck before we go over to part 2 and talk about the matchups? Which will be Pauper Walkthroughs episode 7, 1099 matches with Blue-Black Trinket.
I think that if you're a control deck player, you should try this deck. Otherwise, well, try it anyway. Just try to see what you like.
Yeah, try the deck, goddammit!
Yes.
You'll find a lot more info about this deck on this YouTube channel and on mtgostrat.com. Thank you for watching MagicGatheringStrat, and thank you, Power T!
You're welcome.